to ask you, have you ever had somebody say something so awful that it truly impacted the way that you felt about yourself? It could be a friend, a spouse, a teacher, a family member, and this really shaped your self-worth. And not only did it shape your self-worth, but it actually impacted your ability to see your full potential. Because for me, my entire childhood was exactly that. Well, my guest today, he had that exact thing happen, where somebody that he looked up to told him something that could have defined his entire future. And I'm about to tell you a little bit about how amazing my friend is. And all of this would not have been possible had he allowed that moment in junior high to really define who he was and his potential. So let me tell you about how amazing my friend Steven is. Steven is a powerhouse in the world of personal development, business, and in real estate. His passion for coaching and excellence has taken him on stages in over 25 countries. Amazing. He has trained alongside legends like Jack Canfield and Larry King, as well as Olympic athletes, NBA, and NFL players. He was even chosen to present an award to a Nobel Prize winner at a pre-Oscar party in Hollywood. Can we talk about full circle from that moment in junior high? If this doesn't already show you that your limiting beliefs and the things that people tell you don't have to define you, I don't know what does. But it doesn't stop there, okay? Steven also played a key executive role in an international marketing company that skyrocketed itself to global success, landing itself in the top 100 marketing companies worldwide. He's also an author, a TEDx speaker, a photographer whose work has been featured on magazine covers and displayed at a Broadway movie premiere. He has been featured on HGTV, billboards, the radio station, and national magazines. And currently, he is the CEO of Keller Williams Realty East Idaho, which did over $1 billion in sales in 2023 and 2024. But beyond all of that, what I absolutely love about my friend Steven is how much he loves and has a deep passion for helping people break through their own mental barriers. He has spent his life mentoring and coaching and showing people that no matter where you start, no matter what somebody has told you, you have the power to change your story. And that is exactly what we are going to dive in today. And I am so blessed and honored to call this man my friend and my mentor. And I want to introduce to you and welcome to my show, Steven Hatt. Thank you so much for being here. I am just elated that you are here. You have been such a huge impact in my life and in my healing journey. And I just am so excited. You are my very first guest on my show. And I honestly wouldn't even have this show without you.
I am super honored, and I'm super proud of you as well. It's been fun to watch you work through the process of creating these, and then also just your contribution back. You know, not everybody goes through this recovery process and gets to a point where they're willing to share and help other people along. So I'm just super proud of you.
Thank you. So I asked you to share your bio with me beforehand, and I was shocked. Like, you're incredible. The things you've done is amazing.
Oh, you're kind. I don't like to talk a lot about it. I honestly don't, but I have been very blessed with opportunities. I really have.
It's incredible. And you told me about a story that happened in junior high, and none of this could have been possible if you allowed that situation to shape your future.
100%. Maybe before I get to that, I need to explain a couple of things leading up to that moment in junior high school where this pivotal conversation really created a road sign in my life that I had to make a decision. So prior to that time, I was a skinny little anemic kid kind of a thing. Like, for example, this happened before what I'm going to tell you, but I remember my driver's license as a sophomore in high school. I was 5'4" and 98 pounds.
Oh my.
Now, a guy does not want to have that as being his standard at that age. You know, I'm looking around at girls and going like, oh, I really would like to talk to that girl or meet that girl. And that girl is thinking that's the last person I ever want to talk to. So I was a really skinny, shy, anemic kind of a kid. And so I had some self-doubts growing up just because of my physical appearance. Kind of thing. And then I had acne really, really bad. It was atrocious. And so that weighs on you. I was blessed with amazing parents that really poured into me, and they added love and value and really, really gave me a platform to work on, which actually comes into my life later. But each of us are so critical of ourselves as we're reflecting in the mirror, so to say, and judging ourselves. I had deprecated and really beaten myself up. But I was still happy. And I think that's because of the propping up and the unconditional love my parents had given me. So now let's go to this moment. So it's in junior high. I think it was 8th grade. And it was my English teacher. And again, small, skinny kid, kind of shy, didn't talk a lot. But I was talking to my neighbor for some reason. I don't even remember what the conversation was. And it was fairly quiet in the room, but I had turned around, and usually I'm not talking, right? So I'm talking to my neighbor, and all of a sudden the teacher stops the class, and she says this, Stephen, you will not amount to anything in this life.
In front of everybody?
In front of everybody. I didn't know how to handle that because I looked to role model people like that, key people in my life like teachers, parents, relatives, people like that. And I think we all do this. We give them extra value in the comments that they make. And so now I had this big conflict. I already had this battle going on inside of me of what is my value? Who am I? What is my story? And now I have one of my role models or major contributors to me growing, teachers in general, make a comment that I honestly don't believe she believed. I caught her at the wrong time, and she just broke on me. I just happened to be the one. She may have had an awful day. She was a brilliant teacher. I actually really liked her as a teacher.
So I can't throw eggs at her house is what you're saying? Like, do we have her address and her current contact information?
No, I actually, at this point in my life, I actually love her. I really do. I have a beautiful place in my heart for her. And maybe it's because she created an opportunity for me to truly discover and make a decision, who am I going to become? But at that moment, I wasn't mature enough to see it for what it was. I thought I processed it right, but as I looked back on it years later, it made an impact on me. It had validated one of my negative self-images and added to my desire to kind of withdraw and to not achieve and to be a subhuman kind of an individual. And that was kind of scary, especially looking back, because how many of us go through that but never come to a point where we have to face it and make a decision to move on?
Oh, yeah. Every one of us.
Yeah. Another interesting thing that I think is really important in this discussion is, where does that story come from? You know, I talk about being this skinny kid and having this connotation of who I was, and I wasn't enough to, be liked by the girls kind of a thing. I think that's really rooted going back to like when we're 3 years old. We start creating a story, and I think the power of the brain is really important to understand, because as we get to a certain point and we draw that line, which I hope we get to eventually, we have to be able to challenge, where did that thought come from? Where did my story begin, and why does it continue today? So for example, if I were a 3-year-old, and let's say I loved to draw with crayons and stuff, and let's say that my parents were having a party. And I drew this really cute picture, a picture of Dad and me, and we're playing catch with the football, and I'm just giddy about it. And I'm like, I need to show this to my dad, right? So I run up to my dad in the party, and I tug on his shirt, and I said, Dad, look at this picture I drew. And he's talking to one of his great friends, a really great conversation. They're having fun. And he's annoyed that I'm interfering in his conversation. He turns to me, and there's this look on his face that I'm seeing that I've never seen before. And my brain is now registering this and saying, whoa, take notice. There's something going on here that we haven't experienced before. And then my dad says to me, kids are meant to be seen, not heard. Go to your room and draw there. And my brain is freaking out. It's going like, this has never happened before. And the brain associates those two things together, and it's trying to reason stuff, and it wants to protect me. It wants to keep me alive. So I go to my room as instructed, and my brain is like, okay, we went through something really ugly here. I don't like how I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. Let's make an important connection between these two things. You took something that was important to you, that you created, you showed it to your dad, and he sent you to your room. Right? So that's the truth that my brain put together. I go to my room, I survive, and the brain's like, okay, you survived. This must be good. Let's mark this as important. So a couple of years goes by, and now I do a fun project at school. And I bring it home, and I want to surprise Dad with it, right? Dad's working on a hard project that's due at work tomorrow. So he's in the study working on the computer. I run up to him, Dad, look what I made at school today. And he looks at me again, and he says, son, I'm really busy. I can't look at it right now. My brain takes that moment because my emotions changed again. I felt something different. And the brain says, what reference point do we have about this? And it goes back to when I was 3 years old. And it says, I recognize it. Well, what did we do? We went to our room and we didn't talk about what we created. And did it work out for you? Well, yeah, we're still alive. Let's do it again. And so I withdraw, I go to my room, and I'm safe. And the brain's like, okay, did that work? Is everybody safe? And so all of a sudden, this pattern is being connected stronger and stronger in my brain until all of a sudden I'm now 32, and this has happened dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And so now I'm at work, and I'm working on a creative project, and I come up with a great solution. And all of a sudden, my boss walks by and has a grumpy look on their face, and I was about to present a solution. And my brain, the emotions trigger that feeling again and say, wait a minute, have I seen that look before? Oh, yeah, we have ever since we were 3. Well, what did we do? We went to our room and we were quiet. So what should I do now? And we act as if we're still 3 years old until we consciously acknowledge where that came from and that we can change and make a different connection. So that's what's happened all the way up to that point.
Right.
I had all those connections.
I love that because that is exactly what I've gone through in my past experience with my mom. And I like this saying that your brain is a muscle and your muscle carries muscle memory. And you actively have to practice because that's the pattern that you've created in your brain. And you actively have to practice over and over and over to retrain that muscle memory.
Right. Really replace the previous thoughts.
Correct.
Right. I love that analogy. Think about it. I like to play pickleball. If I train myself for years to swing the paddle a certain way on service, if I go to change my serve because I've maxed out what I can do with the old one, my brain will want to continue doing the old thing because it has connected so many times. We are a stimulus response kind of a activity going up here. So if you have all these things happening to you growing up and it keeps replicating as you get into adulthood. And maybe it even stops in adulthood, but certain triggers hit you, your brain will still go back to that same muscle reflex. I love your analogy using the muscle reflex.
Yes. And that's exactly like, for me, let's talk about like when I got into real estate, first of all. So I've told a little bit before to my listeners that I have almost zero education as far as high school education. I was pulled out of school in the 4th grade, and my mom told people that I had special education. Like I had special needs. I didn't learn well. I didn't process things. She happened to not make it past the 8th grade. So when she pulled me out to homeschool me, it turned into me kind of teaching myself and never really going farther than 4th grade. So I was put back into high school, into a school, and I tested at the 4th grade level. And all of the teachers got together and they worked so hard, and they're like, we're not going to let you fail. You're going to graduate high school. And I graduated off of business math and like 5th grade English. And I thought that that defined me. I would tell everybody that I couldn't read and I couldn't comprehend. And I mean, for years, all I heard was that I had special needs, that I was pretty much stupid. And so I came across this time in my life where I wanted to get my real estate license. And I was actually pushed. I was thrown into real estate. And I was resentful towards that because I was like, I'm stupid. I can't do it. Like, I can't do it. I cannot read these books. And I can't help people fill out contracts that will define their entire next 30 years. I can't do it. Like, I only have like a 4th grade education. And that moment was the moment that taught me that I could do it and that I had to rewire my mindset, because I cried all night long and I fought tooth and nail, and I stayed up and I would have to reread the chapter over and over and Google what every single big word meant, because my vocabulary is like this small. And so none of the words I knew how to pronounce or knew what they meant. And yeah, I had to, I could have let that moment of my mom define me forever. And it did up until 3 years ago, when I was like walking my happy butt into the real estate testing, shaking, crying. I was literally sweating. It took me twice as long to do the test than everybody else. And I passed the first time. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not stupid.
Oh.
And I'm like, all of these thoughts about myself for all these years, they're not real. And her words don't have that power over me anymore.
Wow. That is so, so powerful.
Yeah.
On multiple fronts. And I want to touch on it a little bit because it is so powerful. But from my perspective, as the CEO of Keller Williams Realty East Idaho, I get to work with you on a regular basis and see you working with clients. And when you told me that your past history, I had no idea.
Right.
You are an amazing, top-class, top-performing agent.
Thank you.
I had no idea that you had that self-limiting belief on yourself.
And I
because I didn't
struggle.
see it.
Yeah.
You don't have that.
Oh,
and here's the power of that. And this is where I want to go. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
Whether you believe it, what you believe is the reality of life. Yeah. What you believe is the reality of life, not because it's true, but because you put the boundary around that and create that reality.
Totally. I actually didn't tell, this is side note, I didn't tell a single soul besides one person that I was taking my real estate exam, because in my head, I was failing it. I already knew I was failing. The passing rate was very slim. And I was like, I'm not going to be one of those. In fact, I'm going to be one of them who probably never make it into real estate because I can't pass the test. And he had the paper, face down. And I came out and I was shaking and I was just waiting for him to tell me that I failed. And then he flipped it over and he goes, good job, you passed. As if it was like so easy.
Nothing, right?
Nothing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was in that moment that I was like, I could let these thoughts forever hold me back, because if I hadn't been kicked into real estate, I would never have done it.
Yeah.
Ever. I literally was like told, you should do real estate here. I signed you up for your classes.
Yeah.
And I was angry for like even a year after, though. This is how long it takes for your brain to rewire. your nervous system and your muscle memory into changing your thought patterns. Because for even a full year, I was resentful because I was like, I'm not good at this. I can't do this. Like, I don't even know what half this contract says or means.
Yeah, those old thought patterns keep
Yeah.
pulling you back.
Totally.
Those old deep-rooted muscle
Yes.
memory that keeps wanting to keep you back in the normal.
Yes.
The brain wants to be comfortable. It doesn't want to grow. It doesn't want to change.
Right.
But what I really love about what you said is at that moment, you shattered a paradigm. You shattered a belief that can no longer hold you back unless you give to the old muscle memory.
Right.
And that was key for me as well. Moments, creating specific moments that you are able to face and challenge the things that are holding you back. Because the reality is, and this is so important, we do not understand our full potential.
Right.
We live within this small confined, this small box of belief, of story. We tell our story and we live in it and we make sure that our world matches that. For example, if I have that old paradigm of I'm super skinny, unattractive, no girl would ever like me. It's amazing I found a woman.
I was going to say, wait a minute. Your wife is beautiful.
Thank you, bless
Like
you.
the wife.
Here's the interesting thing. If my paradigm remains that, it doesn't matter if somebody makes a compliment to me. If somebody does make a compliment to me, what do I do with that word or that phrase that
Deflect
they tell me?
it.
Yeah, I rebrand it and attach negative emotion to it. They don't mean that.
Right.
That's not what they said. I change it to fit my narrative, to fit my story. I validate and keep almost sacred my story that holds me back.
Right.
And that is pathetic.
It really is pathetic. Yeah.
Because the potential of who we are, why we even live, is to become great. And the day that we can recognize that, and that's one of the moments that changed my life.
So speaking of, tell me about that moment. What was the pivotal moment that changed that you're not going to amount to anything?
Yeah. There's really two key moments in my life that really helped do that. The first one is I went and served a mission for my church. And there's a really beautiful principle that blows me away to this day about that. We as individuals focus on ourselves trying to find happiness and joy. And we just keep going back inside, trying to create this life that we can finally find joy. You know, we find it through buying new things, having the right friends, driving the right car. We try to surround ourselves with these things the world would tell us are going to bring us the joy and purpose and satisfaction in life. And the sad thing about it is they don't. Now, I love having new things. I love the happiness or the fun that can come from doing those things. But it never gets to the level of joy. And that's the difference I discovered on my mission. And here's what happened. When I went on my mission, I gave up my education pursuit. I gave up any girlfriends. I gave up my regular life. And I went focusing on God. And let me tell you why that's so powerful. God knows who I am. He knows my full potential. He believes in me for who I am. He is the only person that will always be there. He is the only person that will recognize me for who I am, that believes in me and wants me to become that full potential of what He created. With that reality, as I connect with Him and He becomes my friend, what starts to happen with my personal belief in who I am?
Yeah.
You can't help but not start to see who you are.
Right.
You cannot help but believe in Him and what He sees in you. And the second thing that goes with that is when I fall in love with God, I start to fall in love with other people and serve them and love them. I just went to Les Miserables last weekend with my daughter. And there's a beautiful phrase right at the very end where they're singing, to love another person is to see the face of God. And it is so true. When we give up ourselves, so to say, we discover who we are.
Right.
And it is beautiful. That was my first major breakthrough in who I am and who I believe I could become. So my biggest recommendation to anybody who struggles with self-esteem, limiting beliefs, anything like that, create a deep relationship with God, because he will see in you what you cannot see. He will believe in you when you don't believe. He will love you when you don't love. And he will change you if you allow him to. Mm-hmm. That was the first piece.
I love that.
So the second piece is not as, it's not spiritually deep-rooted or anything like that, but it's very pragmatic, easy to do, and actually was kind of a lot of fun. So as I grew up, I was fearful, being that skinny little kid. Mm-hmm. You're afraid to try things. You're afraid to do things. You're afraid to expose yourself to failure, right? And so I avoided things that I would fail at, whether it was like baseball. Skinny little kid, you don't want to get hurt by the ball, right? So I didn't try out for Little League until my last eligible year because my dad encouraged me to finally do it. So I get put on this team. They put me at first base, and we had the biggest shortstop in the league. Scare me to death, right? I would dive out of the way instead of digging for the ball because I was scared of getting hurt. Yeah. But going through my past, you know, I would save yourself. I don't want to get hurt. But if you think about, the brain is thinking, keep yourself safe. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Don't get hurt. Keep yourself safe. All of a sudden, I had this list of things I was afraid of, whether it was a relationship, whether it was trying something new, whether it was whatever. I didn't want to fail. I didn't want to get hurt. When I had that moment of discovery and realization that there were things holding me back, right? I had now met God. I had now started to liberate myself and find who I was and see my potential. Mm-hmm. I started to discover this list of things that was holding me back. And this was fun. I wrote down this list of things that was holding me back, things I was afraid of. And I intentionally started to go after them, to knock them off one at a time. Because you do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. And I love that.
I do too. I love that.
So I'll share one story that I did with that. So I was afraid of the water, and I always thought it'd be fun to slalom water ski. It just looks so cool.
What the heck is
it's skiing on on one ski behind a ski boat, so you go back and forth.
Okay.
It's really cool. And so once I had made that list, I had just gotten into real estate. This was back in 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. And I had a client that had a ski boat. And I shared with them my desire and goal of eliminating some of these things. Hey, I've always wanted a slalom. Would you? And they're like, oh, we'd love to take you up. Now, it's October in Idaho.
Oh, gosh. So it's like freezing.
So it is cold. But everybody's like, game on. I got to watch this. This is going to be fun. So we take their ski boat up to a local little reservoir. Water's around 50 degrees, which if you haven't sat in 50 degrees, it's not quite the ice bath, but we're getting close, right? Anyway, she did have a dry suit, which I was very grateful for. But I jumped in the water, and I stuck with it until I got up on one ski and started skiing. And something magical happened at that time. And it's exactly what you went through when you did your test. That moment you passed your test, you had a major breakthrough.
Yeah.
I had that breakthrough when I got up on the water, and it was just chills just soared through me. And it was like I proved myself wrong and liberated myself from the past. Something I had anchored myself into. I had anchored myself into because somebody may have said something and I believed it, or I self-created it. It doesn't matter where it came from. I was holding myself back. But that moment I broke through, not only eliminated that fear, but empowered me to tackle the next one and the next one, right? Each of those little victories creates an energy to jump to the next one.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect.
It is, and it's powerful. And as that brain starts to see all these things, it's challenged, and at one point it just sits there and it goes, I don't have a strong reference point of accuracy in the past anymore. I am more open to change now than I ever have been. Let's listen carefully and cautiously and move forward. But as you mentioned before, the muscle, you really have to pour a lot of attention into it to correct it.
Yeah,
But the more you succeed, the more you overcome failure, the more victories you have, the easier it gets to tackle the next thing.
That is so true. And one thing I think is like super important for me in my healing journey is I had to know like those setbacks weren't setbacks, because like the ripple effect, you could be tackling one fear after another, and then all of a sudden there's a fear that comes along and you tuck your tail and run, and you just feel like all of your work is gone. And it's not. And so that's one thing I want to make really clear is about, I love the saying that healing is not linear, because you're going to have ups and downs, and there's going to be times that you're not going to face your fears.
Right.
Which just prolongs facing your fear.
Right. I think that's a really important emphasis to make, because it's so easy, even today, after all the opportunities that I've had and resume building things that I've had, there's still days that I look in the mirror and I get anchored back to some of those old thoughts I had as a teenager. I don't know if they'll ever go away.
Right.
But the awareness and the belief to reconnect again, and honestly, I guess this is where I go back to God again,
right?
Because He's my rock.
Yes.
Right? And so being able to anchor back to that and recognize those triggers that are trying to suck you back in, so that you can help the brain reprogram itself, work that muscle to condition response differently the next time.
Right. I love that.
Go to my water skiing thing. How many times did I fail before I finally got up?
Yes.
Every time I failed, what's my brain screaming?
To quit.
Quit.
Right.
See, I told you so. You're failing.
Yep.
I told you so. But what kept me going forward? What drove me to keep going? I had a bigger purpose. I was done being sick and tired of limitations. God had given me a bigger vision of who I could become. He had a bigger calling for me than what I had given myself. And I saw that, and I knew there were things in my way that were holding me back that I had to embrace, I had to tackle, I had to move through. And so to have a goal big enough, a vision of where you're going that's strong enough to help navigate through the challenging times is so important. Whether God's on your side and you're using that as your motivation to move forward, whether you're surrounding your people with inspiring people that believe in you and encourage you and tell you that, you just wiped out on the ski again, but you got this. You're so close. Make this small adjustment. Mm-hmm. You're almost there. You got this. Just this much more, and you got it. Because that feeling of success, that feeling of conquering fear, that fear of moving, or that success feeling of accomplishment, is so worth it.
Well, even it just goes back to like the reading. Like I could have fallen back to that mindset of, I can't join a book club.
I can't read.
I can't read. I can't comprehend. I'm stupid.
Yeah. One other thing that as I get the privilege and opportunity of working with people, one of the challenges I think we have is we fall into this cycle of limitations.
Yeah.
We don't like ourselves. When we stand and we look in the mirror, we aren't complimenting ourselves and telling us how great we are. Oh, we're tearing ourselves apart. We're looking at ourselves and saying, and usually it's like when you first get out of bed, right? So of course we're looking all natural and beautiful. And you go and you look in the mirror and you're like, did you know one eye's larger than the other? Boy, I feel sorry for the people that have to look at this today. We tear ourselves apart. One thing I love to help people do is to change that story, because let's jump into a scripture here really quick. We're commanded to love God. That's the first great commandment. The second one is to love our neighbor as ourselves. So let me ask you this question. How can you love your neighbor if you don't love you?
I love that so much.
So here's what we're going to do. When you go into the bathroom, every time, make it a habit. You go up and you look yourself in the mirror and you look yourself square in the eyes and you say, I love you. I am so grateful to be you. You are an amazing individual. Now, the first time you do that, you're going to feel like a liar, but you're also going to feel something else. And I do this actually in some of the seminars that I teach as a group. I make people say it with enthusiasm and all together because, peer pressure will help them do that. 1, 2, 3, let's say it. But you look in the mirror and you say, I like myself. I love you, But there's something that happens on the inside. You get chills. And it's almost that soul within you is just saying, Do you know, sorry,
Oh.
do you know how long I have fought for you and tried to do my best so that you'd be proud of me? For you to recognize just even this one time as you're looking in the mirror, and you're saying you like me? Thank you. That means everything to me, you know? And we do. There's a soul in us that wants to be great, wants to achieve, wants to accomplish, and that's what God sees in us. And as we give ourselves to that brilliance, we can start to discover who we truly are. And as we love ourselves, all of a sudden we become a beacon and a light to everybody around us. We now become a cause to help people step up and rise up. And what does that do to you? It lifts you again.
Yeah.
The more you give, the more you receive. It's a beautiful thing. So every day when you look in the mirror, you tell yourself, I love you. Sorry, where's the tissue?
I know. The tissues
You
again.
didn't say we were going to cry.
I've seen all over social media kind of like this joke about I've healed so much that I don't like anybody anymore. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Oh, it drives me.
Breaks my heart.
Oh, it makes me like almost angry.
Yeah.
I'm like, don't put that out there. Because when I was there, right? Like I hated myself. Therefore, I hated everybody else. And you tend to find the worst in people when you hate yourself because you project a lot.
Right.
And this trend is just going around, right? It's like all over. I've healed so much that I don't even like anybody anymore. And it's like, you haven't even begun to heal, because when I started to heal is when I actually started to love everyone. My whole mindset has changed when I started to heal, and when I started to, one, forgive myself and love myself and no longer allow all of the horrible things that happened to me growing up to define me. I began to, and so I love that you use that Bible verse about love your neighbor as yourself, because I've literally never thought of it that way. Like, how can you love your neighbor if you don't even love yourself?
Yeah.
And that is so true. And it wasn't until I started healing, like truly healing,
Right.
not the, oh, I've healed.
Right. Isolation is not healing.
It's not.
It's actually a great indicator that you're headed the wrong way.
It's a trauma response.
It is.
Totally, 100%.
You're trying to save yourself by living in a safe space, but
Yes.
all you do is compound the issues.
Yes. And you're just an unhappy person who sees everybody else as unhappy people.
Yeah.
And how do you spread love that way? Or how can you love anybody under that mindset? So I love, like, that was just such an aha moment with that verse, because I've always said healing is the opposite. When you truly start to heal, you truly start to love people. And even like for my mom, this is kind of off topic, but I used to hate her. And if you know, the Bible says what hatred is. It's like murdering that person to say that you hate them. And I hated her. And now I have a love for her, and I don't talk ill about her. I can talk about my story, because that's two different things in my eyes. But I don't even want to be in rooms where people are talking about her poorly, because I've just come to a point where I love myself so much that I'm not going to accept her behavior, but I also let go of the hatred.
Yeah.
And I can put myself in a room full of people that I used to leave, and I would be traumatized for weeks. And I could say, okay, how am I going to show up in this room now? And how am I going to set the tone for the room and break the patterns of how we all talk to each other and show up here? And how am I going to love people for where they are, or where they're at in their own healing journey? I wasn't able to do that until I could accept where I was at in my healing journey, and where I could love myself. And I actually tell myself I love myself because of you. And it was uncomfortable the first time you made me say it. And now it's not uncomfortable, because I do love myself.
It's so true. I was at a training a couple of weeks ago, and one of the most powerful moments is when Gary Keller, real estate training, he made this statement. He said, love is always the answer. And you can go so deep into that. But as you know, you're talking about this love, how it changes you. You go back to that moment that I had in junior high school.
Right.
it would be easy for me and other people to be like, ooh, I hate her, kind of a thing.
Oh, totally.
But
like me, I wanted to throw eggs at her.
yeah, right. But there's there's that moment of healing, and maybe this is one of the signatures. You know, you're on the path to healing when you love the people that created a challenging road for you to discover yourself through.
Totally.
Yeah.
100%.
Discover yourself is always the answer.
I wouldn't go back and change a single part of my childhood, my teen years, the raging anger I had in my 20s that I took out on the lady at Qdoba who was just looking at me. and I just went to town. I would take it back. But all of that has shaped me into who I am today. And I think that that's another huge pivotal point of healing and growing is when you stop blaming everybody else and hating everybody who contributed to who you are today and your past and your trauma and all of the things that could still define you, you can't help but love those people because of who you are. So I could be so angry that I went through years of abuse and I had adults who all watched it and nobody protected me. Nobody stopped her. Nobody called CPS. You know, I had a principal who saw the whiplashes around my neck and just was like, you know, do your best to just do your best. And I could be angry and hate all, and I did. Like I couldn't look a lot of them in the face for many of my 20s, my years in my 20s. But without all of them, I wouldn't be able on a podcast helping millions of people all over the world start their healing journey. I wouldn't have met you. So it's like you get to a point, it's like, how can I hate them anymore? I could still want to throw eggs at your teacher, but how could I hate them anymore?
Yeah.
It's easy to not like the people who hurt the people you love. Okay.
Oh, it's so true.
You can love her. That doesn't mean I have to love her.
Right.
No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
I just like, yeah, you just get to a point where you can't help but
have some gratitude and love.
Yeah. And I could do that from afar without allowing her access.
Yeah.
On a side note, when I started my healing journey, I just didn't really trust myself. And I just kept falling down and falling down and falling down. But I remember that you told me an analogy one time about a baby crawling.
You know, we as human beings, a lot of us are afraid of failure.
Yes.
To the point that we won't even try something. And there's a really important distinction between failing and failure. Failure is permanent, right? That's a place where you're like, I'm done. I failed. It's complete. There's no additional story to be written. Failing is a momentary piece, right? It's a one-off kind of a thing. So as a baby, when a baby is born, so I have 7 kids. I've watched this miracle 7 times as well as other places. But a baby gets to a point that all of a sudden they start crawling. But then I call it the magnetic furniture. They get to a point that all of a sudden they like zook, and they're stuck to a furniture and they start climbing up it and they're going up it, and then they get to the top and they're teetering, and then they let go with one hand and they're holding on with the other, and they're just grinning ear to ear because this is a rush. And then they fall over. They have this big crash. They start crying because they got hurt or it shocked them or just some startling thing. Mom comes running across the room, picks them up. Are you okay? You know, and the tears are coming down and everything else. And as soon as the baby gets composure, they push mom away, get back down on the floor. And where do they go?
Right back up.
Right back up. The magnetic furniture sucks them over and right back up. And they keep doing it again and again and again until what happens?
They start walking.
They start walking. That is the cycle of success. That is the cycle of growth. And that's how we were born to grow and succeed. No successful person, accomplished person ever got there without failing. It's a natural cycle. But somehow we get into school or adults or other important people around us give us, we don't get the star on our forehead for getting a good grade, or we get the red F on our paper at school. And all of a sudden we start getting this connotation that failing is failure. Failing is an opportunity to learn and grow. It becomes a stepping stone to growth. That's how we were born. That's how we were created. That's how we were put here to grow and become is by failing and learning and growing, failing and learning and growing, failing and learning and growing. So the moment we can recognize that, acknowledge it, accept it, and embrace it, instead of when you fail, you give up and withdraw, sit down, evaluate, learn from it, and go at it again. It's just like what you went through and what I went through, right? Those moments that we talked about that are so important. We had to make a decision that went through failure until we broke through.
Right.
And we're liberated.
Right. But I think of that a lot when people write me that and they tell me that they don't want to have kids because they don't want to fail their kids. I just think of this analogy.
Yeah.
So much.
And this is a hard topic.
Mm-hmm.
Your greatest joys and your greatest pains come from your kids.
Yeah.
And I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, pondering it, and living it. I adore my kids.
Same.
We have had some amazing, amazing times and also some real big struggles. And I am not a perfect parent. I am far from it. I can create a laundry list of mistakes that I've made. But I'm grateful that God is there to bridge the gap. And that my kids can find paths to happiness and joy and still love me for the fallen, short person I am of not being able to be the best parent or to be the best role model or whatever. I have one of my daughters that the last 2 years we've really struggled with our relationship. I had the most beautiful conversation with her last night. We spent about 45 minutes on the phone and we just talked openly and we loved on each other and our relationship is better than it has ever been. And I wondered at times if we would ever have that privilege. And I wondered at times if we would at some point, and I prayed for it that we would have that. But to have that now, it brings tears to my eyes and my heart just glows with pride and love and admiration for her. And we went down a really hard road together. My mom used to always tell me, and I think this is a really powerful principle, the story is not fully written yet. And I think we can use that with our kids, but we can also use it for our lives.
Yeah.
There's two authors to our life. One is God, the other is us.
Mm-hmm.
And as we work together, the story is not written yet.
Right.
And it has a beautiful ending. Yes, there are trials, but it's the trials that make the joys and the victories so beautiful. Going back to what you were talking about, your challenging childhood is what creates the beauty and vantage point of what you have today. Right. You understand, you recognize what it is you have today because of the challenges that you went through. The challenges you went through created the strength that you have today. That opposition is required in order to have the strength.
Yeah.
The failure. Don't fear the failure.
Exactly. I wanted to bring up the parenting thing because a lot of my listeners have written me about that. And you are going to fail. You're going to have that where you're crawling in parenting, in the new career, and starting a podcast, in anything, and you're going to fall. But you have to get back up.
Yeah.
And you're going to fall, and you're going to get back up. But it's going to get better, and it's going to get great. Just like your phone call last night.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And without those ups and downs, you may not have appreciated it as much.
100% true.
You know?
The beauty of where our relationship is today. Now, granted, this is not a call saying, destroy everything and make it miserable because that's the only way you can. No. The desire is, as parents, our desire is for our kids not to have to walk the path that we walked. Mm-hmm. It's inherent in all parents, right. I believe, that we don't want our kids to go through any of the struggles that we did.
Right.
And that's a little presumptuous and a little scary because sometimes we have to let go. we teach, we train, we love, we educate, we help them, we nurture, we support. But there are points where you have to let them walk and be there to catch them. Go back to that unconditional love. You have to love them. And as a parent, sometimes that's really hard because some of the activities feel so personal and almost attacking. And that's some of my old triggers. And that creates the withdrawal that was my protection.
Right.
Withdrawing and hiding and self-doubting and you're not worthy and all of that stuff. But it's through that the victory is found. It's through that the joy is discovered. It's through that the relationships are strengthened. Don't ever give up.
Exactly.
Keep the hope. Keep praying.
And have the babies.
Keep praying. It's your greatest joys, right? You made a comment to me not long ago. Your last cute little Clark baby. So adorable. You made a comment of, I don't know what I'd do without him.
Oh.
He's just so precious in your life now.
Yeah. And boy, did I not want him. I mean, you got firsthand of that, of watching that. Yeah, totally. So what are some ways that our listeners can identify their own limiting beliefs?
Yeah. You bring up a good point when you talk about, I think there's two sides of this conversation. When you talk about limiting beliefs, there's the empowerment side of growth, and there's the triggers that want to pull you back. So we're fighting in the middle of these two. And so being able to see both sides of it, of challenging who we are today in terms of how can I continue to grow and become more, as well as recognizing the negative draw and restrictions that are holding us back, those triggers.
Yes.
Those triggers. Journaling is a great way.
Love journaling.
As you can document your feelings, your emotions, events that happen, situations, triggers, how you responded to them. One of the things you mentioned earlier about this muscle memory, to offset the connection that the brain has made between stimulus and response, you have to overwhelmingly provide evidence and action opposite of what was created. Now, that was a little complicated, right?
Yeah.
To change something that is so embedded and ingrained in your mind, you have to do it so many times and intentionally in a big way to reconnect the brain to a different outcome. So if I keep getting triggered by a certain activity, I have to almost, and here's a great thing. I'll give you an analogy of creating a habit. Let's say that when you wake up in the morning, the alarm goes off and you immediately hit the snooze button again and again and again. You're 7 times into it, an hour and a half past, you have to set your alarm 2 hours early just to get out of bed. And you're like, I just can't do it. It's a habit, not that you're tired. It's a habit you've created. So how do you reprogram that habit? That habit has been connected in your mind hundreds, thousands of times to the point that it's like the brain hears the alarm, there's the stimulus, the activity is to do what?
Snooze it.
Hit the snooze, right? So if you're going to reprogram that, when's the best time to do it? It's not that morning when you're trying to change it. So the recommendation I like to do is, when are you strong enough to do it? The middle of the day. So you go to bed in the middle of the day, you get in your bed, you set your alarm for 1 minute. When it goes off, you exercise exactly how you want it to be long term. You smile and you say, even out loud, oh, today's going to be a great day. You sit up out of bed, you stretch, you turn off the alarm, you take a deep breath, and you smile and say it again, today's going to be a great day. Oh, I love myself. This is going to be great, right? And then you go back to bed, set your alarm for 1 more minute, and you do it again and again and again. So the brain is now creating this new pathway of activity. So the stimulus, the alarm goes off. The next morning, let's say that you did that 20, 30, 40, 50 times. During the day when you have the power and the willpower and everything else to do it correctly. The next morning, the brain hears that alarm go off, and what's the brain doing? I got a little conflict going on here. I have this old pathway that I want to hit snooze again, but there's something going on here that's a little bit different. Yesterday, we really worked hard about this, and so now you consciously have to make a decision. Do I follow the old pattern, or do I enforce and enable this new one I'm working on? And yes, there's that draw that's going to keep pulling you back until you create that habit. Research shows about 66 days you have to have that continuous habit, or 10,000 repetitions. But whatever it is, keep going back to it until you can create that solid connection that it's automatic. It's just a reprogramming, an intentional reprogramming.
You actually have to respond differently when it happens. And so I love that analogy of practicing, getting in the bed, setting your alarm and practicing, because he said that's the only way you actually retrain your brain.
Yeah. There's a fascinating statement, and I think we all know it. Practice makes perfect, and it's a complete lie. Practice makes permanent, right? Practice makes permanent. So if you want perfect, you have to have perfect. Practice makes perfectly permanent.
Yeah. Wow.
So if you practice it wrong all the time, it's only going to come out wrong. The beauty of that is if we intentionally know what we're trying to create, or we have a direction we're trying to move towards, all we have to do is identify what are the proper steps to move towards that and start practicing them. Growth is just a series of successful steps. Recovery is a series of successful steps, intentionally moving down that process, right? So if we know where we want to go, even if we don't have complete clarity of what it looks like, move in that direction. Take that step into the darkness until enough light shows. Have faith in the process. Surround yourself with inspiring people. Listen to good podcasts. Read great books. Connect with God. Let him get involved in your life and create that light to illuminate you down that path.
I love that. If there was one thing that they could take away from this episode today, what would it be?
One thing to take away from this episode. I think it's not going to be really simple, but yet it'll have some simplicity to it. Believe that there's a better life for you that you deserve.
Oh, yeah.
And that there's a path to get there, and that you're worth it.
That part, you're worth it. Oh, that's so powerful. I truly believe a huge part of the reason why people won't face their fears is because they don't believe they deserve what's on the other side of it. Stephen, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. You are so inspiring and so motivating, and I am just so blessed to be able to call you my friend.
Thanks, you too, Rini.
As we wrap up this episode today, I just want to take a moment and really reflect on how powerful Stephen's story is. His story is a powerful reminder that other people's words, opinions, and stories about us, they don't define us unless we allow them to. If you feel like this conversation has resonated with you, or even somebody pops into your mind that you're like, man, this person needs to hear this, send it their way, because you never know how much one episode can change someone's entire life. Let's keep growing, let's keep healing, and let's do this together. I am your friend and your host, Rini Spencer, and I will see you in the next episode.